Hello Captains, this is Kent again and welcome to the Flight Show. So today I am doing a first impressions review of the new software released by Orbx, which is Buildings HD, which basically is a rework of the AutoGen scenery for the flight simulator FSX or Prepared 3D world. And so what it's doing is it's taking the original AutoGen objects and replacing the textures on them with textures that are more realistic, and they lend themselves towards the geographic region as to where you are flying. So I will right off the back say that this should be interesting. Right off, I think it's more geared towards your VFR flyers rather than yours that are doing long hauls, because you're not really flying low where you'd see all of this. But I wanted to give it a shot and let you have an opportunity to see what's out there and see if this is something that you want to purchase. So let's go ahead and take off. The first region that I'm going to be showing you is Tokyo. And the reason I chose Tokyo is because it is a hugely densely populated area, urban area. So you can get a good look and see what these building textures look like. Now, the building models, they've added models as well as taken the original models and added textures to them. So, though this is not a contrast comparison, because once I installed it, I didn't do any videoing prior so that you could see it, but I can definitely show you what's there. And right off the back, got to get out of these clouds, you can see that the textures on the building are rather nice. You can see the renderings of balconies for the skyscrapers, or the the type of the skyscrapers that are I don't know. Should a skyscraper be considered something between just around 10 floors? Let's just say apartment buildings. We'll leave it at that. And as soon as I get out of these darn clouds, you'll be able to see things better. Okay, great. Here we go. Okay, so here we are in a really dense urban area of Tokyo, Japan. And as you can see, the buildings look a lot different than they did back in the days of default AutoGen for Prepared or for Flight Simulator 10. So I see the difference. Now, how much they recommend that you have your buildings on medium. I just am curious to see what this flows like with extremely dense, just to see how the frame rates are. So let's just give it a pause here. And I'm going to bring you right back after I move this to extremely dense, because if we're going to do it, let's just trick it out and see what actually happens, right? Alright, be right back. So I thought I would show you the settings that I'm going to fly on. The mesh resolution, they suggest that you put it at 5, and the texture resolution that be at 7. The fact that these are on Ultra are specifically for my settings that actually came from recommendation of something that I'll get into in another video. But what I'm basically kicking up is the extremely dense AutoGen buildings. I'm going to leave the trees at very dense, because there are a lot of trees even at very dense, so we're just going to leave it at that. Alright, so bring you back after we're back in the game. Okay, we are back. And my frames don't seem to have dropped any, so we'll just fly it out. Now, I will say that my first impression of looking at this scenery, it looks very Fly Tampa-esque. When I see these buildings, I think of their Kai Tak scenery and the building density that you would see right before you approach Kai Tak. So in that respect, I think that this scenery is a visual noticeable difference. Now, I am telling you right now, I'm running a i7 87K overclocked to 6.7 gigahertz. So, and I have 16 gigs of RAM. So it's not like the smokinest hot system in the world, but it's not cheesy. So you have to bear that in mind when you're looking at my screen. Now, I have noticed that how my frame rates look when I'm filming versus when it's filmed and recorded. Sometimes it looks a lot choppier depending on where I am. So disclaimer, this may not come off too smooth. I won't know until after I finish recording. But for right now, I feel it looks smooth. Now, you might ask, well, what are your frame rates? I try not to focus on that because one of the things in my years of trying to boost my frame rates, there was something that was said that I try to remember. At one point, you can't always be obsessed with your frames per second. You just have to find out, does it look smooth? And as long as you're not chasing frame rates, if you see fluidity, then that's ultimately what you're trying to achieve. So this does look fluid. I don't see the choppiness. I don't really see any stutters that I can notice. Do you? Now, mind you, after production value might be a little different. But what I will say is when it's extremely dense, which you don't even have to because it said you could put it in medium, the textures really give this a Fly Tampa look without being a Fly Tampa geographic area. Because I took off, gotta get out of the clouds. It's a rainy day here in Japan. When I took off from a generic airport. I do not have any scenery added for Japan other than using FTX Global, or at this point it's now branded Orbx Global. So it looks really dense. It looks really good. Alright, so we're going to go to another geographic region. Okay, we are now here in Paris at Charles de Gaulle Airport. And what we are going to do is fly from Paris, Charles de Gaulle, towards Paris. And let's see what it has to offer. Now, I don't know if you could tell, but that was my default scenery for the airport, so we have no fear of any third-party software being an influence on this particular HD building. Now, I did read that if you want to know what is it that HD building will not change, their manual says that it will not change the appearance of airport buildings or custom-made buildings. So if you have the Eiffel Tower, it's not going to touch the Eiffel Tower. It's just going to deal with all of the auto-gen. It also isn't going to mess with Zedwicky's renderings in their cities, or so any regional cities and third-party regions like that. It's not going to touch those. It's only going to go for the auto-gen, the SFX, the FSX, and the prepared 3D auto-gen scenery is what it's going to actually manipulate. Okay, so I can see the difference in the buildings right off. The renderings are looking good. I wish I had a high-def monitor. I don't have that yet, but I will. And now we're going to fly just a little bit more into the city so that you can see the differences. Now again, if you are a prepared or Flight Simulator 10 general aviation person and you want to go sightseeing, I definitely would say yes, I recommend this software. If you are a long haul person and just get in your 747 and go, I will say this, you will have an impressive looking approach as you're flying towards urban areas, but the amount of bang for your buck that you would get out of it would be really up to you. So this is my personal recommendation for my VFR people. I don't think you'll be disappointed. Depends on how much you're really noticing textures on that level. I will say that myself, do I regret spending my money on it? I think the price point's a little high, but then, no, I'm thinking about it in Australian dollars. I think in US dollars I paid $25 for it. I can live with, paying 25. The more I think about it, I mean, what is that? A night out at the bar? Okay, one night I'm not going out. I can live with that. So, for the price point, I think it's a value. I might have wanted to see maybe $10 off, but you know, I'm not gonna fidget. I don't feel like I wasted my money. I don't feel like this was a waste of time. But I will say this: for those of you who fly X-Plane and Prepared, as much as I hate to say it, X-Plane's autogen makes Prepared look pretty bad. I gotta give X-Plane its autogen scenery. And I definitely think, particularly in population dense areas like this is not at X-Plane level, and I think that's just because of the way autogen's laid out. But I definitely think this is a vast improvement on the old bird in terms of the autogen scenery. So it takes it up a level. If you've never looked at X-Plane, then I don't think you're going to care. But because I've seen it and I know it, I go, oh man, Prepared, you might want to take it up a notch. I would say that this is definitively an improvement. And, you know, I know that there are people in X-Plane that make the argument, yeah, but you get so much beauty right out of the box. That's a fair argument. I mean, it looks good. I'm not going to take anything from X-Plane 11 for that. But be it that I am a Prepared guy and had invested so much money in Prepared, I wasn't moving over to another flight simulator. And I want you to bear that in mind when everyone's sitting there thinking about Flight Simulator 2020. Because as beautiful as it looked, I thought to myself, and I'm going to spend all of this money that I've invested in Prepared to move over to yet another flight simulator? That's a tall order. I'm going to sit back and see how that shakes out before I even think about moving up to Microsoft 220. Especially after what happened with Flight Sim World, because I gave it a chance. I had purchased the copy and just kind of like getting a feel for it, see where it was going. Yeah, no, you're gonna have to prove to me that I'm gonna buy that. And it's no offense to Microsoft. I don't think you should have let it go in the first place, but hey, that's just me. All right, so this is Paris. I hope this is giving you an idea of what it looks like in this regional area. I think I will show you one more before we get out of here. Okay, so I was talking about how it would be good to fly this at a place that's very population dense. Well, what better population dense place to test this out than Mumbai, India? I mean, you know, truth be told, Mumbai has, you know, India has 1 billion people in it just like China does. So what better place than to, now, as I said, I hate going out of generic airports, but again, I wanted to choose a place, knew that the autogen wasn't, you wouldn't know the difference between it if it was regional or if it was, you know, the third party software, or if it was actually the HD, the building's HD. So as you can see, this is a generic airport, but look at it. When you're flying in a population dense place like this, I have got to admit, this looks good. If you got cities for VFR that you want to fly in, like Mumbai, I will definitively say that you will probably be getting your money's worth out of this. But for an urban area that is highly population dense, I would buy that this is what it should look like. So for VFR flying in densely populated urban areas, yeah, I am definitely singing the praises of Buildings HD. Is it worth it? As I mentioned before, I do not regret purchasing this. This looks really good. This looks... Oh wow, let's fly over here where we have some of the high-rise buildings. I mean, I'll just say it. It looks good. It sets out to do what they have claimed it should do, and it's adding high-definition textures to building areas. Now, if you're in a place that's like residential suburban, there are textures for those buildings. However, I don't know if you'd notice it much because the buildings are small. But when you're flying over, high-rise buildings in a particularly urban area like this, you're going to notice it. And as I said, it kind of, as you look off into the distance, gives it a Fly Tampa-esque sort of detail to the buildings that you would expect in a highly densely populated urban area. So I definitively give this a thumbs up. So this was just, again, a very short first impressions of Orbx HD. Don't have time to fly around the world and look at every urban area. Wanted you to have a chance to look at it and get your thoughts, or give you my thoughts on it. Should you purchase it? If you're a VFR person, definitively. If you are not a VFR person but want something that might get you into exploring flying VFR and kind of like rekindle your love of that aspect of flying, then I think this would definitely be something you wanted to add to enhance your software. And as I said, the argument goes that X-Plane looks, their autogen looks really great, quote unquote, out of the box. This gets prepared closer to that level, and so it looks much more visually appealing. Well, I really appreciate you tuning in to this little first impressions review. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it helps you make a decision on something that you want to buy. And I look forward to seeing you in the virtual skies. Surprise, I'm not done. How could I not, if I was talking about densely populated areas, how could I not, or how could I get out of here without giving a nod to the very country that is the home of Orbx, which is Australia, and go through Brisbane, which is an incredibly densely populated area. Now, full disclosure, this is a payware airport that I have for Brisbane, which I believe is from Orbx. So we have to transition out of this, but their software specifically said it does modify the autogen scenery in Australia version 1 and 2. So I thought, hey, I can't get out of here without flying over the autogen scenery in Australia. So we've picked Brisbane. Now, if the person from Australia, okay, so for my guy, sorry for the brief pause there, I had to restart my recording, but for the guy that had mentioned to me, once again, Perth has been left out, I apologize. I don't mean to leave Perth out. I wanted to keep the video relatively short, and I had to pick a densely populated area. I knew Brisbane was populated more so than Perth, so that's why I went with it. But I want to give a shout out to you because I don't want anyone to think that Perth is not on the map on the international stage. Okay? Fair enough. Ooh, love that bridge. Looks really good. But that had nothing to do with the buildings. I just had to make that point. That is Australian version 2 with such a detailed bridge coming out of Brisbane. Alright, so now I'm going to get a low and slow so that you can see how the autogen scenery has altered or been altered for the urban area of Brisbane, Australia. So let me get down low and slow so that everybody can see this. And yes, I can see the textures that have been replaced. Now, I can't tell you all the variety of the houses, but I can say this. I don't immediately notice two houses that are exactly the same next to each other. Now, I'm sure if you paused it and you looked, you could do it. I'm just saying, at first glance, there seems to be a great deal of variation, and I am liking that variation. I get a little bit of stuttering here because I can see that the drive is really trying to load in the textures, but all in all, looks good. If I had started off with this and didn't just jump in and load it, I'm sure this would be doing a lot better. But yeah, so I see the textures on the buildings, particularly the one that's just at the glare shield. You can see the textures on the side. So yeah, and I see over here to my right in the upper right corner, those buildings that you see, the low rises right there. definitively new high definition textures for the building. So even you guys who just got Australia version 2 had something new added if you get Buildings HD. So okay, this time I'm for real. We're out of here. I hope you enjoyed the review. If you're looking for a new upgrade in the general appearance of your AutoGen, definitely something that you should get. And I look forward to seeing you in the virtual skies.